This is one of the most annoying topics of conversation in basketball, the GOAT debate. No matter how you spin it, there's pretty much no way you can have a civil conversation about the greatest players ever and not leave people offended. While there's definitely been a shift towards LeBron in the last year or so since he broke the scoring record, the most agreed upon take is that Michael Jordan is still the greatest ever. Ever since he retired, there have been a handful of players who have had some sort of media push at one time or another to at least be in the conversation with Jordan, but have all fallen short of making it a realistic argument for one reason or another. Today, we'll be going over the moments where each legend post-Michael Jordan lost their chance to be the GOAT. The first player who built a truly compelling case to challenge for the GOAT label after Jordan was Shaq. After Mike retired in 1998, Shaq took over as the consensus best player in the world. Even though it looked much different from the way Jordan produced, it was leading to very similar results. Just 2 years after Jordan retired, Shaq embarked on his own Jordan-like stretch from 2000 to 2002. During that time, he won a regular season MVP, had 2 all-defensive team selections, and won 3 straight championships, winning Finals MVP each time. But these weren't regular Finals MVP awards. He averaged 36 points, 15 rebounds, and 3 blocks a game on nearly 60% from the field. These go toe-to-toe with Jordan stats in the finals, and could even be argued as better depending on how you look at them. With a three-peat under his belt, one of which he went 15-1 en route to a title, he was playing as well as anyone we've ever seen. Not only that, but he had the opportunity to do something that even Michael Jordan didn't do, and that was four-peat. If he was able to become the first player in the modern age to lead a team to 4 straight titles, he would have had a very compelling case over MJ. However, this never ended up happening. Shaq had a toe injury that was going to require surgery in the offseason, but he decided to wait until right before training camp to get it because he wanted to recover on company time since he got hurt on company time. Because of this, the Lakers started off just 11-19 and were firmly out of the playoff picture around Christmas time. From this point on, LA had to scratch and claw their way back to the 5th seed, basically playing at a playoff level intensity from Christmas onwards. From there, they ended up losing to the eventual champion Spurs in the second round. From this point onwards, Shaq's health as well as his conditioning were up and down, which led to his days of being the most dominant player in the league ending. Had he taken better care of his body and extended his prime, he really could have maybe been viewed as the greatest ever. But after 2003, we all knew that was never going to happen. Next up, we have Shaq's former teammate, Kobe Bryant. Ironically, people started giving Kobe a potential case to be the GOAT because of the personal stats he was accumulating after the Lakers got rid of Shaq.
But Kobe Bryant, at the end of the day, Dan, because you think I'm a punk, will go down as the greatest basketball player that has ever lived.
The only problem was that his team was horrible at this point. There weren't any team accolades to give him a real chance to be compared to Mike, but the eye test showed that he was at least on the same level as him when it came to creating and hitting tough shots that few other players in the world could make. Combine that with some record-breaking scoring seasons, and people were starting to see the vision. So once his Laker team started becoming competitive again, the path was there for him to at the very least make a case for himself. He won back-to-back titles in 2009 and 2010, which led to people speculating that a 3rd straight ring would be enough to get him in the same room as Mike. At the end of the day, Jordan pretty much had better stats across the board. But because of his success as a Robin earlier in his career, if Kobe was able to three-peat as Batman in his early 30s with a few years left in his prime, he could have maybe even surpassed Jordan's ring count. But by the time the 2011 season rolled around, the Lakers' supporting cast around Kobe was just too old to continue competing, and they were swept out of the playoffs by the eventual champion Mavs in the second round. It's a shame that the beginning and the end of Kobe's prime left him stuck with subpar rosters, because he didn't really have any chance to compete for titles with what the Lakers were surrounding him with. So at the end of the day, without that 6th ring, there really is no conceivable case that you can make for putting Kobe over Jordan. This one is tricky to go about, to say the least. Not only because LeBron's longevity is the first real argument that is legit when rivaling Jordan's legacy, but because there were 2 key points in his career where he lost any chance to pass Michael. The first one goes without saying. The 2011 finals was a meltdown. After signing with the Heat and declaring that they would win upwards of 6 championships together, the Mavericks stunned everybody and took down the heavily favored Miami in the finals. And nobody underperformed more than LeBron, who literally had the worst playoff series of his career on the biggest stage. The move to Miami was already scrutinized enough because it was perceived as the easy path to a ring. But the fact that he couldn't get it done closed the door on any Jordan arguments. Until 2016. Fast forward 5 years, and LeBron is now a 3-time champion after leading the finals in every single stat to take down the 73-win Warriors. While it was an absolutely incredible feat that led to him gaining the respect of pretty much everybody in the basketball community, most people still had him a step below Mike. But a few weeks after the season ended, Kevin Durant signed with the Warriors to put together the greatest team ever on paper. Everybody knew that the Cavs were inevitably going to meet the Warriors in the finals again. If LeBron was able to somehow take down the Monstars, it would have been really hard not to label him as the greatest ever. But as we all know, Golden State dispatched the Cavs in just 5 games. LeBron played amazing, averaging a 33-point triple-double, but personal stats weren't relevant at this point, because at the end of the day, his finals record was now just 3-5, compared to Jordan's 6-0. Was this criteria fair? Probably not. Putting up the numbers he did against one of the best teams ever assembled would normally be enough to boost a player's resume. But he dug himself in a seemingly impossible hole after 2011, so it was going to take a seemingly impossible task to get him back to eye level with Jordan. Stephen Curry's discussion for being the greatest ever was by far the briefest out of anybody on this list. After winning his first MVP and championship in 2015, Steph rose his game to an entire other level that we quite frankly haven't ever seen anybody play at. He upped his scoring average from 23 to 30 points a game, became the first and only NBA player in history to hit 400 threes in a season, led the league in steals, and also somehow managed to do this on 50-40-90 shooting splits. If you were around to watch this Saturday primetime game against the Thunder in 2016, I promise you we were all saying that this guy might be the greatest we've ever seen. This was backed up by the fact that he led his team to an NBA record 73 wins in the regular season, one more than the mark set by Jordan's Bulls in 1996. And unlike guys like LeBron, KD, Kobe, and Shaq, he had a pretty stain-free reputation in the playoffs. It looked like he was going to be adding to his growing legacy in the 2016 postseason as well. He cemented what should have been a legacy-defining performance by pulling his team back from a 3-1 deficit in the conference finals against Kevin Durant and the Thunder. But he threw all this away a few weeks later after a horrible showing in the finals, leading to the Cavs upsetting him in the dubs in 7 games. When the Bulls won 72 games in 1996, the team made it a point that the record didn't mean anything without a championship to complement it. So when the Warriors failed to get the job done, largely because of Steph's shortcomings, he blew that stain-free legacy of his, taking him swiftly out of the GOAT conversation. It felt like from 2014 through 2016, Steph leveled up every time we saw him play. Him and the Warriors just kept getting better and better, and we didn't know if they were ever going to plateau. While the Dubs eventually did somehow get better by landing Kevin Durant in free agency, Steph was now forced to share the ball with Kevin Durant for 3 years, taking away from his personal success for the greater good of the team. If things broke differently for Curry in the 2016 finals and beyond, he could have been looked at as the bus driver for the greatest team ever, a multiple-time champion, and maybe broke a few more scoring records along the way. He really could have been seen as potentially the greatest to ever do it, but that's just not how things unfolded. Lastly, we have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who very recently lost any chance he had of being in the greatest ever conversation. From 2019 to 2021, Giannis very quickly put himself on GOAT level trajectory. He won back-to-back MVPs, including a Defensive Player of the Year award in 2020. However, him and the Bucks came up short in the playoffs during both of those seasons, which led to discussions about whether or not you could win with Giannis as the best player on your team. That question was answered the next season though, as he finally got the Bucks over the hump and brought home a finals trophy in 2021. The Greek Freak was nothing short of spectacular throughout the entire playoff run, but he was especially great in the finals, putting up numbers similar to Shaq en route to the title. Not only that, but he had multiple iconic moments, which included the clutch block on Aiden in Game 4, the game-sealing alley-oop in Game 5, and the 50-point performance in Game 6 to close out the series. All of a sudden, we looked up and saw that Giannis was a 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, 5-time All-NBA selection, champion, and Finals MVP at the age of just 26. It felt like he finally broke through and figured things out. For some context, Jordan didn't even win his first championship until he was 27, which meant that Giannis was ahead of him by a year in that department. Had 2021 been the start of a potential dynasty in Milwaukee, Giannis could have been seen as this generation's MJ. However, I think that ship has sailed at this point in time. Following the 2021 season, Giannis and the Bucks were in a prime position to repeat as champions, but an injury to Chris Middleton in the first round led to them getting eliminated by the Celtics after a 7-game battle in the conference semis. The loss couldn't be blamed on Giannis at all though, as he averaged 33, 14, and 7 against an historically good defense. Of course, this wasn't ideal for Giannis' legacy, but he at the very least got a pass for doing all he could without his second best player. The following year, their team was mostly healthy and they secured the first seed in the East, but they were shockingly eliminated in the first round by the 8 seed Miami Heat. In hindsight, it's clear that Miami was no regular 8 seed, and Giannis was battling an injury during this series, but this still has to be seen as a real letdown. Now, Giannis is 29 and his team is in much worse shape than they were back in 2021. Chris Middleton looks like a complete shell of himself, the roster is much thinner, and the Damian Lillard fit has been kind of clunky to start. Maybe Dame and Giannis will develop some incredible chemistry together or something, but I just don't think this roster is going to win a championship as currently constructed. A few years ago, we were talking about how many rings Giannis was going to end up with by the time his career ended. Now, we're unsure of whether or not he'll win another one at all. Because of that, it doesn't seem like he'll have any real chance of ever passing MJ. Aside from him, there's a ton of talented players in the league, but none of them have any real chance to catch Michael. Jokic and Wemby might have a shot, but it's still too early to tell. At this point though, it looks like MJ is going to end up getting the Babe Ruth treatment and remain the sport's defining player for decades and even centuries into the future. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you view Michael Jordan as the GOAT? If not, who's your pick? Subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys in the next video.